I went to the mystery school. There was a lot of darkness there. All of a sudden, they were doing exorcisms and they were becoming abusive. They were channeling extraterrestrials. It was really wild stuff. They just suck you in with it. And everybody I met said, "Oh, I can see in my third eye that you're a powerful healer and you're going to be healing crowds." So these are scary things. I'm not here to scare you. Well, the New Age path doesn't fill you. Well, I never was filled with peace on that path. $80,000 to $100,000 I lost on that path. But that money did not matter. Allah took away everything, and I said, I don't want to live this life, but He gifted me Islam. When I started reading the Quran before I was Muslim, all my questions were answered. And I would be like, oh my God, who wrote this? I fell in love with the Quran right away. It bypassed my ears and went into my heart when I first heard it. Because I was a professional singer for 30 years, that didn't fill me. Everything else is a tunnel that you're moving through in life. When you become Muslim, that tunnel expands, and there's the light, and it's waiting for you, and your Lord is waiting for you. I was sleeping, but you're in that half sleeping state. And I was standing at the foot of my bed, and there was a being in front of me, directly in front of me. And he said, "She loves God. She loves God." And then the voice turned demonic and said, "She does not love God. She does not love God." And he tried to get in the top of my head. And all I did was say, "I do love God. I do love God." And he went back out, and I never had another problem like that. But that's an instance where even the name God kept me safe. Believing in God kept me safe. And if you don't have that, what's going to happen? So these are scary things. And I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to say, if you're doing what you should be doing anyway, which is trying your hardest to be close to Allah so that you can have the most beautiful of endings on this earth, you shouldn't have any problem.
Assalamu Alaikum, Sister Loretta Poisson. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. As Eternal Passenger, we're very happy to have you with us. I'd like to start with, who is Loretta Poisson? Can you tell us briefly about your life?
I was born in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I had 11 brothers and sisters. I went to college for 1 year. And then I just moved to Ann Arbor, and I worked just little jobs until I finally, many years later, became a hairdresser. And that's where I stayed until almost I left for Egypt. Before I converted, I started my first book because all that happened to me in Egypt was running through my head. So I needed to get it on paper. And after a while, it seemed hilarious. It was quite a ride. So that's it. Then I worked at the Islamic school. That was after I converted. And then I retired about 8 years ago, and I've just been writing books ever since.
How was your life in regards to faith? Did you have any faith before?
I was raised Catholic. That was the beginning of it. And I couldn't find the reasoning for the trilogy. And also, I was not seeing what I was being preached. And then I bounced around. I read about reincarnation, Buddhism, and these kinds of things, something to find some peace in my life. But it never quite filled me up, which kept me seeking all this strange stuff. I didn't have any faith. And I got to a point where Allah pushed me on a new age path. So I found this woman who did past life regression, and she told me I had a very powerful third eye. I was a healer and this and that. They suck you in like that. And then she sent me to another teacher who taught me all kinds of things, and we did work on my body and on my chakras and on my energy, and that went on for years. I went to the mystery school. It put you in a space where you had never been before. And there was a lot of darkness there. We were channeling extraterrestrials and, having classes about the archangels and their families. I mean, it was really wild stuff. So I got through that, and the darkness started to take over. So I found an energy guru, someone who does energy work over the phone, which is the Jinn. And she decided we were going to do workshops around the world together and this and that. She said one day, "You have to go to Egypt in 3 days." Now, I didn't have a passport, but I did it. I, at 49 years old, got rid of my home, got rid of my full-time job, got rid of everything, and I flew to Egypt in 3 days. She was supposed to fly there and meet me and show me around because she'd been there. Her brakes went out. So I was in Egypt by myself. She said, "Just get a taxi driver, have him take you out to this place in the desert called Saqqara. That's where the step pyramid is. And you need to tone in front of these niches. I get there and I say to the ticket office, I want to get into the Seraphim. And they said it's impossible. It's being renovated. There were inspectors of archaeology, I found out later. One came over, told me it was impossible. The second one came over, got me into the Seraphim, but he also proposed 1 week later. And I was married to him in Cairo 3 months later. So this is how Allah, and he was a Muslim, obviously, and I knew nothing about Islam. But I didn't come to Islam for another 6 months. I had to hit the wall, lose everything, and then gain Islam.
What did you find in Islam and you couldn't find in the New Age?
What it does is if you're looking for spirituality, but you don't want rules, that's the path to get on. They spoke about God, they spoke about the angels, but there was a lot of incense and a lot of oils. So the New Age path is like my teacher in the mystery school said that he had slayed a dragon. I mean, these are the kinds of things that they just suck you in with it. And everybody I met said, oh, I can see in my third eye that you're a powerful healer and you're going to be healing crowds. It's step by step, it gets you into this. It's very seductive, and that's what I would say to people who are looking at it, but it does not bring you peace. You have more questions than answers on that path. And when I started reading the Quran before I was Muslim, all my questions were answered. So I would say the big difference between the New Age path, you can get in there and anything goes. And that's a feeling of freedom for people, but the real freedom is being close to your Lord. Well, the New Age path, it can be peaceful, but it doesn't fill you. There's a big difference between being filled with peace and feeling peace from the outside. Well, I never was filled with peace on that path. Like I said, everything that happened, I wanted to go to the next level and the next level and the next level. And what I found in Islam is just answer. I would read the Quran and I would be like, oh my God, who wrote this? So before I was Muslim, I was just like, it was so beautiful.
Have you ever experienced something that you can't forget? Can you share what happened?
I guess the one that shocked me into moving on, I'd get into Utah for 8 days and I was like I was living in a cloud. But then the teachers there turned to darkness. That was a shock for me. These people that were all light and I was following them, all of a sudden they were doing exorcisms and they were becoming abusive. The other thing was there was a woman, one of the teachers, who channeled an archangel called Metatron. You would call her on the phone and she would leave her body and say, he's going to go into my body now, and then he's going to go into one of your cells and he's going to give you a reading from inside your cell. Why didn't I think that was not right? But I didn't. I did it twice. But nothing really shocked me until my guru that came to Egypt finally, the way she was not good. I went to England because my husband said, I think that you need to meet her in England, because he knew that she was not right and he wanted me to see it, but I was so hooked. And so when we went to England, she ended up locking the door and throwing us out. And I was in her yard with nothing. And she had everything of mine and my husband's pretty much in her house. And she locked it and wouldn't let us in. And so my lesson came when I was standing in the rain in the yard and I wondered what was going on because I'd never had this kind of problem with her. All of a sudden, a driver drives up with brand new clothing and the plastic over it had my credit card, which I had given her for business purposes. And that's when I lost everything I'd ever gained. I didn't get it all the times that she did other things. That's when I got it, that she was using my credit card for something other than business. Well, she's the one that said we need to book all these workshops around the world. And I said, okay. One workshop would be $1,000 and I had 5 of them going, plus the tickets to get there, which was $5,000. And then she tried to buy furniture on my credit card and that was $5,000, but it didn't quite go through. So yeah, about $80,000 to $100,000, I would say. $80,000 to $100,000 I lost on that path. I wept and I wept and I wept because everybody said, when you go to Egypt, you're going to lose all your money. You're not going to gain anything. But that money did not matter because it got me to Islam. And one night I decided I don't want to live. I wasn't Muslim yet. But then I said, you know what? If I do this, I'll even be farther away from God. And I said, no, God, I am going to stay alive and live this life you gifted me.
As the Eternal Passenger Women Volunteer Team, with your help, we have already inspired many people to embrace Islam, wear hijab, and start praying. Now we want to create an Islamic youth center for women to change even more lives, inshallah. You can support this effort by clicking the Super Thanks button or donating to our Patreon, because we believe that changing one woman's life can shape the future of an entire generation.
In your opinion, what's the biggest and most obvious difference between Christianity and Islam?
My mother was the only one that was staunchly on Catholicism. And my mother asked me that question when we had the dreaded conversation after I converted. She said, "Why didn't you convert to Christianity?" And I said, "Ma, why would I worship the Son when I can worship the Father?" I put it in terms that she could understand. She just was silent after that, and she never asked me about Islam again after that negatively. That's the reason, is that I had a tumultuous childhood. We'd go to church, we filled up a whole pew, the seating thing, and I'd come out of church and the dysfunction would start before we hardly got down the stairs. And I'm just like, this can't be right.
Actually, there's an ayah in the Quran. Allah says, "Perhaps you dislike something which is good for you and like something which is bad for you. Allah knows and you don't know."
Exactly. That's exactly it. I didn't know that losing everything would be good for me, but it most certainly was.
What was the thing that made you question your beliefs? Was it an event or a thought? And when was it?
After I realized what that New Age path actually was. And then it was the feeling that night, after a month of just being a shell, that feeling of not wanting to live. That's what pushed me. So what happened was, after that, it was Ramadan. So I said, "I want to fast with you. Teach me how to pray." And I made my shahada in the bedroom, and life went on like that. It was so beautiful. So that was my pivotal point. Allah took away everything, and I said, "I don't want to live this life." But he gifted me Islam. It was like a month after September 11th, which was amazing.
What was your view of Islam back then? Did you have any prejudices?
I have to answer yes, because I think everyone does. You grow up with them. And I grew up in the UP, which was homogenous. That was still not that kind of diversity. And when I started going to masjid, there was just these beautiful, I just went to a UN meeting. It opens you up to what's really real. And that is, Allah made us in different colors, in different sizes, with different languages. So it was lovely. And my prejudices kind of just melted away.
Why did you choose Islam instead of Buddhism?
First of all, Buddhism has this little gold God thing. I never got that deeply into it. I just went there to find some peace. But there were certain things, subhanAllah, Allah keeps you safe your whole life. He didn't allow me to get into it deeply. But then with Islam, everything else is a tunnel that you're moving through in life. When you become Muslim, that tunnel expands. And there's the light, and it's waiting for you. And your Lord is waiting for you. I mean, how can that compare to anything else? It cannot.
Can someone really change another person's energy over the phone?
I would have to answer yes to that, only because the Jinn are involved. And I called that energy guru in England many times, and she would shift the energy in my body. But that was the Jinn, and I'm convinced of it. That she was working with them, I think. And maybe we didn't know it, maybe we didn't realize it, but yeah, I think that that's possible, only because I experienced it. But then you have to know where it's coming from. It is not this person, it's the Jinn who are able to get into our blood.
So, how can we protect ourselves from the evil beings?
Well, Allah has gifted us a whole line of morning adhkar, a whole line of evening adhkar, a whole line of things to say during the day. Without that protection, you will be lost and you will not grow. That's how I feel. I feel like it gives you that platform, that safety to move forward. So for me, I have to be very careful. I have to say things almost all the time, so that, because there was an open door there, and if I get weak, that door opens again and I can feel it. And I'm like, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So I say, learn your adhkar and nothing can touch you. If you do the right adhkar in the morning and the right adhkar at night, and after your prayers, there's going to be very little that will touch you. Allah will protect you if you ask Him.
Sister, recently someone I know tried to end her life, and we have some doubts about the evil beings. How can someone understand if they are affected by them?
We are at the end of times. and the fitna is falling on our roofs like rain. So if you do not have your weird of adhkar, if you do not have a strong faith, what's going on around you will get to you. And so I don't necessarily believe that those kinds of feelings that people have, they're a whisper from Shaitan. That's all he can do is whisper. He can't do anything. So I believe that that's just whispers that, and then you're in the middle of this chaos. The earth is dying. There's so much happening right now that, you have to have a strong faith. You have to get back to Allah or you will despair.
This is entirely about our connection with Allah.
Exactly. I mean, what else is there? Look around you. There's nothing else on this earth. We just had an election. I mean, we've got sinkholes that are pulling things in. Please get back to your Islam because this world is going down.
Is there any specific incident you can't forget?
I will tell you a specific incident that I had before I was Muslim. I was sleeping, but you're in that half sleeping state. And I was standing at the foot of my bed, and there was a being in front of me, directly in front of me. And he said, "She loves God. She loves God." And then the voice turned demonic and said, "She does not love God. She does not love God." And he tried to get in the top of my head. And all I did was say, "I do love God. I do love God." And he went back out, and I never had another problem like that. But that's an instance where even the name God kept me safe. Believing in God kept me safe. And if you don't have that, what's going to happen? So these are scary things. And I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to say, if you're doing what you should be doing anyway, which is trying your hardest to be close to Allah so that you can have the most beautiful of endings on this earth, you shouldn't have any problem.
What impressed you the most about Islam?
I guess in the beginning, I fell in love with the Quran right away. It bypassed my ears and went into my heart when I first heard it. Because I was a professional singer for 30 years, that didn't fill me. I left that. But now when I hear the Quran, it's so much more. So that was one thing, is the way they greeted each other, Assalamu Alaikum. And then the generosity. Let me just say, for the past probably 12 years, there hasn't been a moment that I haven't felt it in my life. And anybody who gets up in the night knows this feeling of just a nearness that you can't get during the day. And you just pour your heart out. And he answers in ways you could never have imagined.
How did you feel when you took shahada? Could you describe that moment in detail for us?
It just was the most natural thing for me to just say the shahada. Then I said, okay, I'm not going to the masjid to pray. I'm going to learn how to pray perfectly. And then I want to go to the masjid and pray. So I kept practicing at home, praying. The Friday that I decided to go to masjid, I got in there. There was one other auntie there, and she didn't know which way to face. So she was facing the wrong way. I thought, well, she must know what she's doing. She's an auntie. And I faced the wrong way. So after a year of, I'm not going to masjid till I'm perfect, I faced the wrong way. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Sister, the Qibla's that way." That's how little I knew. So the shahada wasn't just being Muslim was enough for me. Just being Muslim was enough.
You started practicing Islam, even performing salah and fasting, before you become a Muslim. Can you describe what it felt like to pray for the first time?
My first sujood was natural. I mean, I don't think since I became Muslim that I have not missed a prayer knowingly. I mean, I immediately started praying, and I was already fasting with him in Ramadan. This was a gift. I had nothing left. And when I put my forehead to the ground, it just made perfect sense. I had been watching my husband do it for 6 months.
How did your family and the people around you react to your conversion to Islam?
What's interesting is because I left everything and they knew I left everything and went to Egypt, I was the talk of every family reunion. They finally had to make a rule, no more talking about Loretta in Egypt. So they were used to me doing off-the-wall things. That New Age path was off the wall. And my brother actually said to me, "I think this is just another phase you're going to go through." And I said, "I think you're wrong about this one." I had a relative who was not so loving and accepting. That was a problem. But I just had to cut her out of my life for a while. My family at first, rejected me, and then they were drawn to the Islam in me. I mean, they would call me separately and ask for advice, and they'd say, "You're so wise." I'm like, "It's not me, it's the Quran, but you don't want to hear that." The only horror story was with that one relative, but the rest of them were just, if it was too much for them, they just stayed away, and which was fine with me. I loved my sister's reaction when I first put the hijab on for my family. It was the elephant in the room that my hair was covered because nobody else was. She finally leaned over and said, "Having a bad hair day, Loretta?" Everybody just cracked up, and that broke the ice, and then they had questions about it. That was my first time with my family with hijab. I was mostly with my husband, and I remember accepting hijab. I had put the hijab on. I had been putting it on, taking it off, putting it on, taking it off at first. And finally he looked at me and he said, "Why do you have that thing on?" He was saying that because I took it off and on. And I said to him, "You know what? I feel it in my heart now." Then he started teaching me Islam. So after that, then it was just a matter of breaking the ice with my family, and then that was it. Nobody said anything else after that. They would say things like, which they never said in my whole life, "I miss seeing your hair." I'm like, "No, you don't. You miss me being uncovered. That's what you miss." The blessing of becoming Muslim at the age of 49 is that you bring a little wisdom with that, and you're able to tolerate more than somebody at 23 who converts. I had a relative who, was unkind to him in my presence. And she, said things to him that should never have been said. So I was so angry, and that I cut relations off with her for a while and didn't see her a whole lot. But what's interesting is that she got cancer and she was dying. And the two people that she called, this one who never wanted anything to do with religion, the two people she called to come to her were my Christian sister and myself. So that's the fitra nature. Your family knowing we're on the truth. It bothers them, but they know it's the truth. They do. It's in them. So that's all I can say is if you're being persecuted, it's not you, it's Islam. I just kept steady in my deen, and I was as kind to them as I could be. And if they were not kind to me, I tried to forgive them or distance. And they missed the Islam that I was living. So if you're as good as you can be, and if that's not working with them, a little distance never hurt. And if you're lonely, you have to be with Muslims, because the best company is Muslims, and you have to keep trying to learn. If you do not amass knowledge at that point, you won't make it because you'll falter. But if you keep getting bits of knowledge from different lectures, it's going to inspire you.
Sister, if our Prophet, peace be upon him, entered the door right now, what would you like to say to him?
Well, it's interesting because one exercise in Ramadan I did was to write a letter to the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. And it was so heart-wrenching and beautiful because he suffered so that we could have our Islam. If he were to walk into the door right now, I would lower my head in front of him because that's the adab. And I would ask him to ask forgiveness for me. And that's how I would handle it. And I would weep and not stop weeping until he closed the door behind him again.
If you had the chance to speak Palestinian women, Palestinian mothers, what would you like to say to them?
When the tears would stop flowing, I would say to them that we wish in this country to have one fingernail of their strength and their fortitude and their love for Allah and their belief in Him. That's what I would say to them. You are the strong and we are the weak. We don't know how you do it. We wish we could relieve your pain, but Allah will relieve it. And I'm deeply sorry that I couldn't do more.
Sister Loretta Poisson, thank you so much for attending. It was such a pleasure to meet you. To be honest, it was the strangest interview that I have. MashaAllah, may Allah accept all your deeds and your efforts and grant you to Jannah.
Thank you for guiding me through it and bringing me hopefully what is useful material for you, inshallah.
Assalamu Alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.